think the best way perhaps to begin is if I take you a little into my unknown, and that means going back to the Brazilian Amazon with me. So maybe try and shut out the Scottish rain and wind for a second. And imagine that we're 3 days away on a speedboat from the nearest town, and that's quite a few more on one of those small dugout canoes. And we've come to film a sequence with the Matisse. They're very well-known blowpipe hunters. It's our first morning, and everything's not going quite as we hoped, which is probably what we'd expect anyway. So we arrive down at our boats, and we find not the small group of hunters that we've discussed the night before to film with, but in fact the entire village, and everyone has turned up, and everyone wants to come with us, and everyone wants to use any boat they can find, and our very limited supply of fuel. So after about an hour's difficult negotiations, we then finally set off in one very overloaded boat. And so we crowd in with Granny and Grandpa and a pack of hounds, and goodness knows how many other hangers-on, and our 6 hunters, as well as 6 4-metre blowpipes and sheaves of deadly poisonous darts, which there's no known antidote for. And so just 6 minutes from one hit to certain death, and I turn to the camera and he looks rather nervous. It's his first time in the Amazon, and I don't think he's enjoying it very much. And when we do get to where we're supposed to be hunting, we quickly hop out of the boat, Pete the cameraman steps straight into an ant's nest, and before he can turn around and itch himself, the Matisse have dashed off in the other direction, and we're herring after them. It's truly extraordinary, because the Matisse have an incredible ability to be able to identify all the monkeys in the forest, but also they can mimic them, and that's how they then track the animals. And by calling them, we then find out and locate where the monkeys are. Well, they do that, and we just try and catch up with them. So we're soon in a swamp up to our knees, and then sure enough up to our thighs. We can't move and we can't film. I look at Pete again, he's looking very uncertain now. It then starts to rain torrentially. The camera fogs up. Pete then sinks further into the swamp. A bushmaster snake is then found just meters away from us and quickly killed. That's the most poisonous snake in the region. Pete's now pale. Somebody then shouts monkeys, and we'll dash off again, crashing and splashing through the mud. The monkeys are jumping above us, so we can't really keep up. We can just about keep the camera above the mud, and the hunters are taking aim with their blowpipes. There's darts going absolutely everywhere. So underneath this lethal shower, Pete's kind of cowering by this point. Then one of the hunters decides to try and chop down a tree to shake a hiding monkey, which then crashes down just by our heads. The boat driver, who appears from nowhere, then joins in the circus and fires a shotgun over us. And Pete turns to me and he asks rather weakly, "Is it all going to be like this?" And I honestly don't have the answer for him. So filming in remote locations is this constant process of adaptation and anticipation of the unknown. And so basically from the office, before we set off, I try and do all I can to prepare. So it starts with this rather vague map and some unfamiliar and probably unpronounceable place name. And that mark on a map becomes my kind of hook. It's my beginning, and that's where I start my research. And I'll speak to anyone who will talk to me who's ventured anywhere into that same region of the jungle, the tundra, or the desert. And I gather this information like talismans, like little jewels. So the names of good boat drivers, the names of sober plane operators, the nearest hospitals, the hotels that don't have bed bugs, the do's and the don'ts. You never know what might come in useful. And so next, it's the logistical side of the expedition, and basically this is plotting the unknown. So it's choosing the safest, it's choosing the fastest, and it's choosing the most cost-effective way of getting to location and staying there. So we do things like hire sat phones, we check our medical kits, we write itineraries, and we buy supplies. And I have ridiculous conversations with people, so I will ring up charter plane companies in the middle of the Arctic and ask them if they have insurance, and they look at me rather, or speak to me rather blankly. I find out how much my life is worth from insurance companies, which is probably best not to know. I order all the essentials, so rehydration salts, thermorests, thick socks, head torches, whatever's needed for an emergency, and also just a little simple luxury on location. I write a lot of lists. And I try and second guess basically anything that I might need. So that means I waterproof or I dustproof everything. And choosing the right hat and shoes isn't just a fashion statement, it's very important. Sandals in the Arctic, as I once found out, are not the best footwear. We need to find the best and correct camera kit and sound kit, make sure we have enough batteries, have backup plans. And then I stop and I breathe, and I try to imagine myself tired and 3 weeks in, into this trip, and I wonder what will make me look out on the Amazon rainforest or an Arctic blizzard or a Saharan dust storm and just sit and smile in wonder rather than in exhaustion. So one cameraman I know, he hides chocolate bars all around all the camera boxes so we can find them later at these low moments, or rather cunningly to trade them for the best seats on the boat and the plane. And I'm not joking. Everyone has their own survival tactics. And then I begin writing risk assessments, and they have ridiculous lines such as danger identified, getting attacked by a reindeer whilst going to the toilet. Action to be taken, carry a big stick and don't turn your back. We've been trained in remote medicine and hostile environments, so that means I know how to stick a drip in someone's arm, I know how to escape from a kidnapper supposedly, and what to say if a gun is held against my head. I don't tell any of those things to my family. And then there's the film itself. So we write storyboards, we write scripts. These are all ways, basically, of trying to shape the unpredictable and make us feel like we might just have a little bit of control. It can be reassuring, but at times it's also a hindrance. Because really, the greatest moments, both on and off the camera, are those that haven't been drawn or written out, because they are the real magic. So before reaching location, basically I try to remove all the unknowns, and I meet the crew. I find out what the presenter drinks, and I buy it. I find out what makes the cameraman laugh. I find out what's the soundman's favourite chocolate, because we look after each other on location. We make friends. I speak to people until this unfamiliar place is somewhere that I can see in my mind and I can imagine on film and imagine myself there. I colour it in. All this preparation, and yet everyone knows that as soon as you arrive on location, it all absolutely changes, goes out the window, and so does your role. So on this last series, I've been everything from a director to a sound person, to a fishwife chopping up dead piranhas for dolphin bait, negotiating between the BBC and government institutes and Indigenous chiefs. I've been a helicopter co-pilot, I've been a jimmy jib operator, a translator, a tea maker, and even an igloo builder. So really all this preparation basically is simply a diligently thorough denial of our own lack of control of events. However, once you have made friends with the unknown, you needn't fear it, you can welcome it. Because being open to the opportunities that arise in this way means making a film which is informed but also bold. So what do I do when I don't know what to do? There are always some unknowns that you just don't want to face on location. When it comes to doing my sound, the tactic is generally to look like I really do know what I'm doing. I find that reassures everybody else as well. And that means putting the headphone very tightly on my head. It means twiddling around with lots of buttons and generally nodding like this. I was panicking on the inside and then saying 1, 2, 1, 2. I figure if I look the part, I'm almost there to convincing myself and thus everyone else that I know what I'm doing and remembering which of the buttons to push. And then, of course, there are all those technical unknowns. These are the ones you really, really don't want. The ones that gaffer tape and turn the camera on and off just don't solve. Like when we returned from the first day's hunt that I was describing, and we sat down to watch the footage, we dried ourselves out, and we turned the monitor on and everything was bright pink. Or there was the time we were deep in the jungle and it was the night before flying off on a helicopter shoot, which had been very difficult to set up. And I gave the tapes to the camera operator and he looked at me and said, they're the wrong tapes. And that wasn't a particularly nice moment. Or there's the moment when we're in Siberia when all of the equipment just froze. And I could go on and on, but really I feel a little bit queasy at this point. So I think these are the unknowns that I really dread. And though I learn a little more every time, for example, -28 is just about the critical freezing point for everything. And there are, in fact, several different types of tape to be used on a helicopter filming deck. I don't entirely welcome those lessons in those moments. But what about when it's the story and not the equipment that isn't working out just as you planned? I'm going to take you back to the Amazon. There is a slight bias, but that's just my own personal thing. So here's an example for you. We're on our way back now to the Rio Negro. It's a different shoot in Brazil at the start of this year. And the cameraman and I are there to film the final section of a sequence, which basically is about how the water level rises affect this community. And this is meant to be the final really dramatic sequence. So it's going to be full of rain. It's going to be a flooded finale to the film. So we've prepared. We've written the risk assessments. We've bought our ponchos. I've got the Cameron's favourite chocolate. We've storyboarded the whole scene. It's going to look fantastic. It's all about this family stranded in the middle of this stilt village, and they have no food and surrounded by caiman and hidden dangers underneath the water. It does sound absolutely amazing. It will look fantastic. The Cameron and I both head off, and we arrive at a scene of Amazonian idyll. There is no rain, there are no hungry faces, and there is no chaos. There are children jumping out of the trees into the water. They're paddling their way to school, smiling and singing, and they're fishing from the kitchen window. The families live in happy harmony with the flooding river, it seems. And for a full week, we film only around 20 minutes of rain and lots and lots and lots of relaxed and smiling people. So what to do with the pressure of finishing the film with the drama that's needed? So I lie back on my cabin bunk and I look out in the flooded forest. And I turn to what I do know and to those that I do know. And I try to find that inner voice, which is instinct. And I listen to the voices of the people around me, the people that I trust, the crew and the local people. And I also listen to what the universe may just be telling me to. And together, all of us come up with a plan. So that inner voice says, be truthful to what you see and not to the storyboard, which surely was my own creation anyway, even if I did think it looked rather good. And the voices about me say, look at that dark beauty of the scene and the sunshine over the flooded forest, and that defiant happiness of the people and their spirit. And the Cameron says he can only film what he can see anyway, so it's tough. And the universe, well, maybe it's actually telling me that surviving in this remote part of the world is less about the skills of hunting and fishing and fearing the rising waters. And it's more about having a spirit that means you can survive these incredible floods and still continue to smile and to sing all day long. Isn't humanity's resilience and resourcefulness something to celebrate? Maybe we shouldn't fear the unknown, and maybe we should stop telling the stories that we tell ourselves of the world and allow for the magic to find its own voice and images. Maybe we should just be a little humble. And on all of these travels with the unknown, there's something else that the wonderful unknown demands, and that's humour. So I'm going to take you right back to the beginning again. We're back with the Matisse hunters. It's our second day, so we're really hoping it's going to go a little bit better than the first day. We're back with our friends, the Matisse hunters. It's just them, thank goodness, this time in the dugout canoe. I'm sat at the back with Pete, and they're ahead of us, and there's two boatmen behind me. And Pete and I are a bit more relaxed. We're smiling at each other, and we turn around, and on either side, the Amazon's going past us. It's beautiful, it's calling out to us. And we turn back to each other, and as we do, I notice that all 6 hunters are now a violent shade of red. The old chief in front of me turns around and, rubbing his hands like this, offers me a pile of inato seeds and smears his whole face with them. It seems that there's no word in Matisse for continuity, and there's no way of getting the red dye off before the hunt. So Pete and I can do no more than laugh to ourselves, because what more is there to do? It will all be fine, I am sure. We film the hunt, and it does go well, and we're happy, and we return back to the village, and we're planning how we're going to now reshoot this with everyone red. That's fine, we'll just go out red every single day. As we come back to the village, we meet our fixer, our local guides, and we say, we've got a brilliant sequence. Everything else now is going to have to be red, but that's all right. It's quite dramatic after all. And we're met with the news that actually no one in any of the villages can use that dye until all of the chiefs in all the villages agree, and that's for at least a month, as a mark of respect for someone who's died in a very far-off town. So there's no knowing what will happen next or each day. You can only embrace this present moment and offer humble submission to its gifts and surprises, and trust that everything really will work out as it should. There are many more ridiculous twists in the tale that I've just told you, but all I can say is that it did all end as it was supposed to, maybe a little redder in parts than it should have been, and definitely more swampy, but we were all safe from falling darts, and happy in the insights that the unknown gave us.